I never thought my own mother would look me in the eye, in front of 50 of our closest friends and family, and try to completely ruin the happiest day of my life. My baby shower was supposed to be a celebration of new beginnings, a moment of pure joy after years of my husband and I trying to conceive. Instead, my mother turned it into a public execution of my character, weaponizing a deeply personal secret she thought only she and I knew. She wanted to humiliate me, to make me look like a liar and a fraud in front of everyone who mattered to me, all to feed her own twisted need for control. But what she didn't realize was that her arrogance had left a paper trail, and my husband had the ultimate receipts. Tell me, if your own flesh and blood tried to destroy your marriage and your reputation on the day celebrating your unborn child, would you ever speak to them again? Was I wrong for letting my husband completely expose her in front of everyone, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Understand how things got this bad. You have to understand my relationship with my mother, Alina. Growing up, I wasn't her daughter. I was her project, her competition, and her emotional punching bag. Alina is the kind of woman who needs to be the center of attention in every room she walks into. If she isn't the prettiest, the smartest, or the most talked about person there, she will find a way to manipulate the situation until she is. When I met my husband, Mark, things got even worse. Mark is an incredibly kind, successful, and fiercely protective man. From the moment he entered my life, he saw right through my mother's passive-aggressive comments and manipulative guilt trips. Because Mark wouldn't let her control him, Alina instantly hated him. She spent years trying to convince me that Mark was wrong for me, that he was controlling, and that I was throwing my life away. In reality, she was just furious that she was losing her grip on me. The real tension started when Mark and I decided we were ready to start a family. It wasn't an easy journey for us. We struggled with infertility for nearly 3 years, a heartbreaking process of negative tests, doctor appointments, and silent tears. It was a deeply private pain, but in a moment of vulnerability during a particularly brutal month, I confided in my mother. I told her we were struggling, and I begged her to keep it between us because I couldn't handle the pity or the constant questions from the rest of the family. Alina put on a great show of being supportive, hugging me and telling me everything would be okay. But looking back, I realized she didn't see my pain as a tragedy. She saw it as leverage. She saw it as a weakness she could use against me whenever it suited her. A few months later, a miracle happened. Mark and I finally saw those 2 magical pink lines. We were ecstatic, relieved, and absolutely terrified. We decided to wait until I was past the first trimester to tell anyone, wanting to ensure the pregnancy was stable. When we finally announced it to our families, everyone was overjoyed, except Alina. Her immediate reaction wasn't to congratulate us. It was to complain that she was the last to know, even though we told everyone at the exact same time. From that moment on, she made my pregnancy entirely about her. She tried to take over the planning of the baby shower, insisting on venues we couldn't afford and inviting people I didn't even know, just so she could show off to her friends. When Mark and I firmly told her no, that we wanted a small, intimate backyard gathering with a peaceful, rustic theme, she went completely cold. She told me I was ungrateful and that I was letting Mark dictate my life. Weeks passed, and as the baby shower approached, Alina's behavior became increasingly bizarre. She stopped calling to check on me, but she started sending strange, cryptic text messages to Mark. She would text him things like, "I hope you really know who you're married to," or "You deserve to know the truth before the baby comes." Mark, being the grounded man he is, didn't bite. He showed me the messages, and we both agreed she was just trying to stir up drama because she was being sidelined from the party planning. Mark replied to her politely, but firmly, telling her that he loved his wife, trusted her completely, and didn't want to engage in any games. Alina didn't reply to his texts, but she was quietly plotting. She was waiting for the perfect moment to strike, the moment where she could inflict the maximum amount of emotional damage. The day of the baby shower arrived, and the weather was absolutely perfect. Our backyard was decorated with beautiful fairy lights, pastel balloons, and flowers. Everyone was laughing, eating good food, and celebrating the upcoming arrival of our little boy. I finally felt a sense of peace, believing that maybe, just maybe, my mother had decided to put her issues aside for one day to be happy for her daughter. She arrived dressed to the nines, smiling and mingling with my friends, behaving like the proud, doting grandmother-to-be. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I had misjudged her. But the peace didn't last long. After we finished playing games, it was time to open gifts. Mark and I sat at the front of the yard, surrounded by our loved ones. As I opened beautiful blankets, tiny clothes, and nursery gear, the atmosphere was filled with warmth. Then, Alina stood up. She held up her hand, capturing everyone's attention, and announced that she wanted to make a special toast to the expectant parents. Everyone clapped, expecting a sweet, sentimental speech. She walked up to the front, looking calm and collected, and began speaking into the microphone we had set up. She started by talking about how fast time flies and how hard it is to watch your children grow up and make their own choices. But then, her tone shifted. The warmth drained from her voice, replaced by a cold, sharp edge. She looked directly at Mark, then turned to the crowd. "I think it's wonderful that everyone is here to celebrate," Alina said, her voice echoing through the quiet yard. "But I think a marriage and a family should be built on honesty, and it breaks my heart to see my son-in-law being completely deceived." The entire yard went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. I felt the color completely drain from my face, and my heart started hammering against my ribs. I looked at Mark, who was narrowing his eyes, trying to process what she was saying. My mother continued, looking around the room with a look of feigned pity. "My daughter has been lying to all of you, especially to her husband. She didn't want a big baby shower because she was ashamed. Mark, I think you deserve to know that this miracle baby might not be the miracle you think it is. Years ago, before you two even met, your wife had a medical procedure that made her completely infertile. She told me herself. This pregnancy is a lie, or worse, she's trapping you with a child that isn't yours." The collective gasp from the crowd was deafening. My aunts covered their mouths, my friends looked horrified, and I felt like the ground was swallowing me whole. She had taken my deepest, most painful struggle with infertility, completely twisted the medical facts, and fabricated a malicious lie about an affair and a fake pregnancy to ruin my life in front of everyone I loved. She wanted to paint me as a deceitful, unfaithful woman who was tricking her husband. Tears spilled over my cheeks, and I couldn't breathe. I was completely paralyzed by the sheer cruelty of my own mother. She looked down at me with a smirk of pure triumph, believing she had just delivered a fatal blow to my marriage and my reputation. So that is the exact nightmare I was trapped in. My own mother had just announced to a crowd of 50 people that I was a liar and an unfaithful wife, weaponizing my private medical history to destroy me. Before I tell you how my husband handled this, I want you to pause, go to the comments section, and tell me what you would have done. If you were sitting there, humiliated in front of your entire family, how would you react? What would you want your spouse to do in that exact moment? As the whispers began to ripple through the crowd and my mother stood there basking in her twisted glory, Mark stood up. He didn't yell. He didn't lose his temper. His calmness was actually terrifying. He walked over to me, took my shaking hand, kissed the top of my head, and whispered, "I've got you." Then he walked right up to my mother and took the microphone out of her hand. Alina looked a bit startled, but she held her ground, likely expecting him to break down or demand answers from me. Instead, Mark looked directly at the crowd, his voice steady and booming through the speakers. "I usually don't like to air family business," Mark began, "but since Alina decided to stand up here and tell a fiction story, I think it's only fair that we look at the actual facts." He pulled his phone out of his pocket and tapped the screen. "A few weeks ago, Alina started sending me messages, trying to extort money from me. She told me that if I didn't pay for her luxury vacation and give her a monthly allowance, she would come to this baby shower and make up a story to ruin my wife's reputation. She explicitly wrote, and I quote, 'I will tell everyone she cheated and lied about her fertility if you don't take care of me financially. Let's see how her perfect little life looks after that.'" Another massive gasp echoed through the yard, louder than the first. My mother's face instantly went from smug triumph to absolute, ghostly pale horror. She reached for the microphone, screaming, "That's a lie! He's making it up! He's altering things!" But Mark was already one step ahead of her. He walked over to the large projector screen we had set up in the yard to show a childhood slideshow later in the evening. He plugged his phone into the system, and within seconds, giant, crystal-clear screenshots of my mother's text messages were displayed for every single guest to read. There it was in black and white for all 50 guests to see. Her phone number, her profile picture, and her exact words. The messages showed her explicitly threatening to use my private infertility struggles, which she called my weakness, to invent a story about me cheating, all because Mark had refused to pay her off. The screenshots showed Mark's replies, where he told her she was sick, that he knew everything about my medical history because we went through the fertility treatments together, and that he would never let her extort him. The texts proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that my pregnancy was completely ours, that my mother was an extortionist, and that she had maliciously planned this entire public humiliation because she didn't get her way. The silence in the yard broke into utter chaos. My aunts and uncles stood up, yelling at Alina in disgust. My father, who had been divorced from my mother for 10 years and was sitting in the back, walked up and told her she was a pathetic, vile human being and demanded she leave immediately. Alina was completely trapped. The weapon she had spent weeks crafting had completely backfired, shattering her reputation instead of mine. She looked around the yard, realizing that absolutely no one was on her side. She tried to cry, tried to play the victim, but the screenshots glaring on the big screen made it impossible for her to lie her way out of it. With 50 pairs of eyes glaring at her in pure disgust, she grabbed her purse and practically ran out of the backyard, crying tears of anger and humiliation. The moment she left, the tension broke. My friends and family rushed over to surround Mark and me, offering hugs, apologies, and tears of support. The rest of the afternoon turned into a beautiful, emotional circle of love, but the damage Alina tried to cause left a permanent scar. In the weeks following the baby shower, my mother tried everything to salvage her image. She sent long, rambling emails claiming her phone was hacked, that Mark had faked the screenshots, and that she was just trying to protect the family. When that didn't work, she tried to guilt-trip me, sending messages saying that a daughter should never turn her back on her mother, and that stress wasn't good for the baby. I didn't reply to a single one. With Mark's unwavering support, I blocked her phone number, blocked her on all social media, and blocked every single one of her friends who tried to fly monkey for her. I sent a final, formal legal cease and desist letter to her, stating that if she ever contacted me, my husband, or came near our child, we would immediately file for a restraining order and take her to court for extortion. The rest of my family has completely cut her off as well. She is now entirely isolated, banned from ever meeting her grandson, and left alone with the consequences of her own malice. It's a sad reality, but it's the reality she chose when she decided to put her greed and pride above her own daughter's happiness. Looking back on that day, I realized a painful but liberating truth. Shared biology does not equal family. A true mother protects her children. She doesn't try to publicly execute them for personal gain. If it wasn't for my husband's quick thinking, calmness, and those beautiful screenshots, I don't know how I would have survived that day. He protected me when the person who gave me life tried to destroy me, and for that, I will love him forever. We are now focused entirely on the future, eagerly awaiting the arrival of our son, knowing he will be raised in a home filled with real love, honesty, and security. If you think my mother got exactly what she deserved, and if you believe Mark did the right thing by exposing her on that big screen, please hit the like button to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more crazy, real-life dramatic stories just like this one, and make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. I really want to read your thoughts on this entire mess, so drop a comment below and let me know how you would have handled a mother like Alina. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.